Welcome back to Company Grip Guitar. I am Ben, and today I'm looking at two guitars that I picked up on the Black Friday sale for about 120 bucks each. This is the Squier Debut Series Stratocaster, and this is the Epiphone Melody Maker E1. Now, fun thing, I'm going to give both these guitars away at the end of this video, so just stick around if you want to learn how to perhaps snatch one of these. Well, welcome back to my channel. As you can hear, I am a little bit congested, which is definitely no fun. So these two guitars I picked up on Black Friday. This is the Squier Debut Series, which normally retails for about 150 bucks. And this, in this box here, is the Melody Maker E1 from Epiphone. And this normally retails for about $180. I managed to snag both of these for $117 for the Squier and $119 from the Epiphone. Squier is from Amazon.com. The Epiphone was actually from the Gibson website. I have very low expectations at that price point, but let's just see what happens here. So let's open these up. Found the goodies. Let's see, we'll go over those in a minute. And I found the guitar. All right, let's see what we've got in box number 2. This is the Epiphone Melody Maker E1. The box was destroyed, but thankfully Epiphone does ship it double box. Let's see how this guitar fared. I've only ever had one guitar show up with a snapped neck, and ironically, that was a Epiphone in a hard shell case. So let's see, we've got the valuable, important accessories in box. Do not discard. I wonder if they're talking about this. The smallest possible Allen key that they could have fixed to this. You know, I don't need to take that off. Interestingly enough, the fretboard protector is not on the guitar. It is just chucked in the box. Strange. The neck is not snapped, always a good sign. Look at that, not TV yellow, just a bright yellow guitar. All right, so here are the two guitars unboxed. I've got the Squier Debut Series Stratocaster on my left here and the Epiphone Melody Maker E1 on my right. Now I'm gonna run through a bunch of tests on these guitars, get a lot more information on them before I return to you guys in just a little bit here, and hopefully I'll be a little less congested. All right, I will see you in a bit. Let's talk about first impressions of these guitars. So immediately what I notice is the weight difference. The Epiphone here comes in at about a pound lighter than the Squier here. This comes in at 5.86 pounds as opposed to the 6.81 pounds of the Squier. So it's not a big difference, but that is something you might definitely notice as you are carrying it and playing around for, you know, an hour, or if you're a beginner and it's your first guitar. Now, in terms of the aesthetics of these guitars, well, I should say that the Squier came out nearly flawless. Like, there is not a single extra wood fiber or metal burr or anything. It's just a beautifully constructed instrument. The finish is nice, the neck feels pretty good, with the exception of one thing, and it's probably the biggest offense you can commit on a fretboard, and that is the fact that I can feel these frets. And the fretboard is a little bit dry, but it's nowhere near comparison to the Epiphone here, which had the most dry fretboard I have ever seen on a guitar that I have ordered and purchased. So I've oiled both these up. They are going to be a lot better if one of you guys were to receive these at the end of this video. But I do want to say that the fretwork on the Epiphone is quite nice, actually. And I didn't even realize that the Epiphone had binding on it, but it does. It's black binding. It's hard to see, but the frets are great. They go right to the edge and then they just round down right to the end of the binding. So it's a great little package there, which is about the only thing in comparison to the aesthetics I would give it points for, because otherwise there's a nick on the body right here, there's a crack in the finish on the backside, there's a little bit of running where the finish on the headstock meets the yellow. So I would give them a C-, a D maybe for this rating. I mean, you should never buy a guitar and it should have a crack in the finish, but that is about how it came out of the box anyway. Now, one more thing I want to talk about is the different sort of materials that were included with these guitars on the unboxing. So we'll start with the Squier here. It came with a welcome card, of course, and then it came with an advertisement for Fender Play. I think that's the name of the app that you can use and download on your phone to learn how to play guitar, which is great because this is marketed as a beginner's guitar. It also came with a couple different tools. You've got a truss rod adjustment tool as well as a tool to adjust the height of the saddles. And then lastly, it came with a tremolo bar, so you can use the tremolo, of course. It's it's a small package, but it's about what I would expect on a budget guitar. When it comes to the Epiphone, well, you didn't really get a lot with this thing. You got a warranty card, you got about 6 or 8 stickers, something like that, and then one wrench to adjust the back spacing on the stop bar here, which would help with your intonation. And that's kind of it. It didn't come with a truss rod tool. I'm surprised it didn't come with an ad for the Gibson app, which is also a pretty robust app that's good for teaching people how to play guitar. So very strange materials that came with the Epiphone, I would say. Now, looks are one thing, but the feel is another. And I have to say, the Squier feels fantastic. It's comfortable, it's familiar, it feels like 65, 70 years of the Stratocaster. And they've done a fantastic job at this price point, which is, what, 120 bucks on sale, but I think it's 150 bucks brand new. I mean, that is just a remarkable feat right there, having this guitar show up at that price. So I got to give Fender or Squier some big props for that. The neck feels great. I've got this wonderful maple neck, and it's a satin finish, but it's not quite a super slippery satin, and it's not a sticky, glossy thing. It's like, overall, I'm just very impressed by this. When it comes to the Epiphone here, it's familiar. It's like a Les Paul Jr., but the body is quite a bit different. It's certainly a little bit narrower. This comes in at 1 3/8 inches, which is about 1/4 of an inch narrower than what a Les Paul Jr. normally is. The neck also feels really good on this. I always worry with the budget poly finishes that they're going to be a little too sticky, but no, this thing does feel pretty remarkable. One thing I do want to point out, though, is that, of course, with this being the older Les Paul Jr. styling anyway, you have a more or less 90-degree angle from the flat top of the body to the sides, and that could potentially be uncomfortable for somebody playing, if it's digging into their ribs. It's certainly something to consider anyway. Now, one of the several things that these guitars have in common is the bodies. So both these guitars have a poplar body, which is, you usually find that on budget guitars, but you can find that on guitars ranging in the several thousands of dollars range as well. Then we get to the necks, and the guitars take the more traditional path by their manufacturers, with the Squier taking a maple neck here, and then the traditional Strat style headstock, as well as the Epiphone taking the mahogany neck, and then the Epiphone style 3 on a side headstock there. One thing to point out, of course, is that the Epiphone is a bolted on neck, which is generally reserved for the, I should say, most affordable of the Epiphone guitars. And, this being 170, 180 bucks, this would certainly fit that qualifier. Now, I think I've mentioned that both these guitars have Laurel fretboards. You'll notice that the fretboard on the Squier here has a really nice, almost swirly pattern to it, and the fretboard on the Epiphone here is more of a traditional striated wood pattern. The Epiphone also, I should mention, is a 24 3/4 scale, and the Squier here is the traditional 25 1/2 inch scale, which is pretty familiar for Fender users, I'm sure. Now, as far as the measurements go, well, let's start with the Squier. We've got a 1.62 inch nut here at the top. For the first fret, we're getting a 0.85 inches, and down here on the 12th fret, I'm getting a 0.88 inches. Now, Squier calls this just a C neck. I would agree. It's kind of like a nice, easy C, if it is just a little bit thin. Moving on to the Epiphone, what we've got is the traditional 1.68 inch nut. At the first fret here, we're getting a 0.86 inches. And down here at the 12th fret, we've got a 0.92 inches, which is considerably thicker. They call it a 60s slim taper according to Epiphone, but I would say it's kind of almost trending towards a fat 50s. It's like right there in the middle. It's actually a very nice feeling neck if you are familiar with the Gibson terminology of necks. It kind of sits right there in the middle, and I tend to find that a very comforting neck to play myself. And also, I'm used to the slightly wider nut, so that's also easier for me, but that is, again, a personal preference. Now let's move on to the hardware. So both these guitars pretty much have some very similar, almost nearly identical strap buttons. Up from there we get to the bridges, which both guitars take a different approach. For the Squier, you've got something that's pretty familiar with Squier and Fender users, which is that the strings go up through the trem block, they wrap around over the 6 different saddles, and then head off to the headstock, where you've got 6 on a side tuners. Now, a couple things to point out. You've got a 6-point trem system on this guitar, which is the older vintage style of trem systems. You know, the more modern Fenders tend to use a 2-point system, which people say is a little bit more accurate out of the box, maybe a little bit easier to adjust. But you'll find camps on both sides that say, you know, the 6-point can also be a fantastic bridge if you set it up right, if you spend the time to do that. Now, I don't really play around with trem systems that much, so I don't really have a horse in that race, but it seems to make sense to me. Another thing to point out is the trem block on the back is one of those half-size trem blocks that you tend to usually find on budget guitars, and that's not a surprise to me at all. And again, you'll find different camps that say, you know, the half-size trem blocks affect the tone of the sustain, or they don't. Whatever you believe might be true and it might not. Moving on to the Epiphone here, what we've got is a compensated wraparound stop bar, which is a look that I've always thought was really cool. Now, one thing that's crucial about these low budget guitars is that these posts are put in the exact spot that they need to be, because there's very little room for error if you need to adjust that. And thankfully, Epiphone has put this guitar in just the right spot. I didn't have any issues with that. Now, something I want to point out, which is I thought a little bit unusual, is Epiphone's real big on the lock tone stuff, which is where they install clips into both the tune-o-matic bridge and the stop bar, so you can kind of snap them into place so they don't fall off if you were to like cut all the strings out. But for this guitar, they've just got a ordinary bridge that's just kind of free floating in there, and the only thing that's holding it to these posts is the actual tension of the strings. I wish they would make that change for all of their guitars. Now, moving up to the pickups of these guitars, well, I should just tell you right up front that it's ceramic pickups all around. For the Epiphone, what we've got is a 700 SCT ceramic bridge pickup, and for the neck we've got a 650 SCR or rhythm pickup in the neck. I've never played a Epiphone single coil pickup before, so I have no idea what these are going to sound like. Now, the controls for the Epiphone are pretty simple. Of course, you've got a master volume, a master tone, and then a 3-way selector switch. You've got bridge, neck, and then in the middle you get the middle, which is both pickups activated. Moving over to the Squier, we've got quite a bit of a different system here. So you've got a triplet of identical ceramic pickups. There's no information on them at all from Squier if they have a name, but there was this funny blurb on the Squier website which says, ceramic pickups are often criticized for being harsh or lacking character compared to Alnico pickups. But in our experience with the debut, they're perfectly adequate for learning and even some recording sessions. So it's not exactly a glowing in-house review, but you know, Squier's never made any bones about this guitar being a beginner's guitar or a learner's guitar. Now, I mentioned that these pickups are identical, and that's something I find really actually interesting, especially from a nerdy point of view about them being a learning tool, because you know, you get, most guitars have different pickups in the neck or the bridge, and so you don't really know how much the pickup is affecting the sound versus the position of it on the guitar. And with these being 3 identical pickups, it's cool that you can switch to the bridge, hear what this pickup sounds like in the bridge, you switch to the neck pickup, and it's that same pickup, but now you get to see how just the different positioning affects the tone and the way that the guitar reacts and the juiciness of it. And I don't know, I think that'd be a really cool learning experience for somebody that wants to know how their guitar interacts with all of its own components. Let's talk about the controls for this. So you've got a somewhat traditional layout in the fact that you've got 3 knobs and a 5-way selector. You've got a tone which controls the bridge pickup. Then the second tone controls only the middle pickup and the neck pickup. And then the last knob here is the master volume, which would control the volume for the entire system there. 5-way selector, position 1 is the bridge, position 2 is the bridge and the middle, position 3 is the middle, position 4 is the middle and the neck, and position 5 is just the neck. Now let's take off these pick guards and see what's going on in these guitars. Now I do like that these guitars both adhere to the assembly line approach of slap everything on a pick guard, slap it on the body, and ship it out. And no doubt that's something that Leo Fender came up with to cut down costs, kind of like Henry Ford with the Model T, right? But inside of these, we've got what you would expect, which is inexpensive components. You've got dime-sized pots, you've got little chiclet capacitors there. Overall, it's nothing that I wasn't expecting, and they actually work pretty good. You know, they feel very good. The only thing I don't really like, if I'm gonna have one con, is I've never liked the Epiphone pickup selectors. They've just always felt cheap to me and like they're going to break, and like it takes a lot of pressure to go from either the bridge to the middle or the neck to the middle. Just something that I have a pet peeve about. But what I would give this guitar props for is check out these knobs. I like how they put these sort of vintage looking, you can see they're discolored. They almost look like they're actually straight out of the 50s. All right, moving on, let's talk about the tuners here at the top. It's not a surprise, but Epiphone and Squier have put nondescript tuners. They've got no names on them. They don't say anything at all, which is not a surprise for these budget tuners, but they do both feel pretty good. I would say that I have a preference to the Epiphone tuners just because there's more spacing to get your fingers in there and do individual adjustments, which is a pet peeve I've had about Fender guitars forever. It's just, you put 6 of them on the side and you got stupid fat fingers like me, and it gets tedious. You're turning it and you're constantly hitting the tuner next to it or bumping it. And it doesn't matter if this is a $150 Squier or if this was a $7,000 custom shot strap, I would still have that same issue with it. That's just a personal preference, of course. Now, let's move on to the sound test of these guitars. I'm going to do a few equal comparisons. For example, I'll do like neck pickup to neck pickup, same volume, same tone. I'll do bridge pickup, same volume, same tone. And then I'll do a couple things that are individual for each guitar just to emphasize certain qualities that it might have. Now, if you've never seen one of my sound tests before, this is the way that I do it, is I put all of the settings up here in the corner so you can follow along if I'm using the bridge pickup or position 2, if my volume's at 5 or 10 or whatever it is. I just like to put that stuff up there so you can see what the guitar actually sounds like. And, I'll play a couple things. It'll be a genre variation, I'll go from some clean, some raunchy stuff, that sort of thing. And yeah, you can just get an idea of what each of these guitars sounds like. And then I will talk to you at the end for my final thoughts, as well as how you could potentially get one of these guitars. Well, that was a sound test. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm really curious what you guys think about the way that they sound. For my ears, I would say I think the better electronics package probably belongs to the Squire. I think the pickups overall have a more rounded sound to them in terms of the lows, the mids, and the highs, whereas the Melody Maker was just a little bit, maybe a little bit darker is the right way to put it. I didn't really find that the darkness was warranted with it being a single coil system. You know, I kind of tend to more associate that with humbuckers, where you get the benefit of having that raunchiness without the humming and the buzzing. So for me, I definitely think that the Squire wins in that regard. And then on top of that, a bonus is you have 3 pickups and a 5-way selector. Overall, you just have more freedom to make a lot more different sounds. When it comes to the actual playability of them, well, I would say that I'm definitely more familiar with the shorter scale Epiphone. This fatter neck, I think it's a little bit more comfortable for my hands, as well as the slightly wider nut there. So my preference, of course, is going to be the Epiphone. And then on top of that, a bonus is just the Epiphone came set up out of the box great. So I would give them kudos for that. Like, it might have the little mini dents there, might have the finished scratch there, but right out of the box, it was set up good to go. I changed the strings on it, I oiled the neck up, but it was intonated, it played great, the action was fantastic. A funny thing about the Squire is aesthetically beautiful. This is a gorgeous guitar, looks fantastic, there's not any blemish on it really, but it was just set up like garbage. Like, I'm not even kidding, it was unplayable. The action was so high that you couldn't even do any sort of solo without fumbling over yourself. The intonation was so far off that, you know, if you're playing an open E here, by the time you get to the 12th fret, you're playing like an F sharp. It was that bad on almost all the strings. It's kind of weird. You get one guitar that shows up looking great, but you can't play it at all. Or you get one guitar that's got like some blemishes, but it just plays fantastic. So it's kind of like the pick your poison scenario. You can always tune up a guitar, more or less. You can't exactly go in there and finish scratches and cracks as easily anyway. So I would give the edge up to the Fender. I think it's a better deal, especially at the normal list price of $150, $160, whatever it is. I mean, that's just a phenomenal deal. I don't even know how they did it. I mean, I assume because they partnered with Amazon.com to release this, they just know they're going to sell, you know, millions of these or something like that. But anyway, let's talk about how you could get your hands on either this guitar or this guitar. This is how it's going to go. I'm going to have a Google Docs form in the description. You will click that and you will fill it out. There will be a drop-down box on the form where you can select if you prefer the Squire or you prefer the Epiphone, and that's how I'll determine what hat to put your name in for when I do the randomized draw. Now, the randomized draw will take place at midnight on New Year's Eve between, you know, we'll say 12 and 12:01. Should be very exciting, but please read the form so you know all of the things there, because if you fill it all out and then it turns out you live in like Portugal, I'm gonna have to disqualify you. As I just mentioned, it is a giveaway, which means I will do my best to package these up as neat as I can, and I will ship them off to you as best as I can, as packed as I can. But after that, I have no responsibility for it. So all that stuff's on the forum. You should be able to figure it out. It shouldn't be a problem. Anyway, I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video. If you like this video, you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, or better yet, consider clicking the subscribe button, because that also helps me out. I would like to give thanks to my Patreon subscribers, because they always help my videos, you know, by just helping donate to the cause. So thank you again for that, guys. I really appreciate the support. And with that being said, I guess that's it. I will see you guys, if not before the New Year's, then sometime in 2026. All right, take it easy.